Oh, hello.
I am your host, Sven.
Jeffrey.
Jeffrey?
Yeah, they used to call me Heifer. Did you know that? Like a
Ooh.
cow. I know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think I actually don't know where it came from. Maybe I should be like sad about that nickname. But
Well, what's a boss? Boss
yeah,
is
so Hefe I think is where it came from. But
yes, yeah.
yeah,
And
and
they
then
just added an R at the end.
yeah, Heifer,
Heifer.
Heifer.
Um,
Sad.
all right. Well,
Yeah.
today is episode 16, and we are working on flexibility as far as which adaptation to fitness.
If we can just
First.
thank Mitch for just being flexible for me for a moment, because
Okay.
flexibility is not just in your joints, I don't think.
Well, I think in the context of most of the podcast, it will be.
Dude, I just went. Do you want to know what I was? You don't even care what I was doing.
Yeah. No, I
Everybody. I'm
do.
late.
I do.
I'm late. I'm 20 minutes late to the podcast, and I hate being late. So my heart rate is racing right now. But anyway, this morning I got up and I saw a free drift boat on Facebook. So now I have two
Uh,
drift boats.
nice. So you could play bumper drift boats.
Yeah, well, no, here the thing is I wanna start, a, like,
Katie and Simon versus Jeff and
no,
Charlie. Oh,
like a outfitter service where you could take people fishing.
okay.
Yeah, so, I didn't know that I was
You got to
gonna
learn to
double
fish, though,
my
don't you?
fleet. What's that?
Don't you have to learn to fish?
Oh, dude, I can teach you to fish. I mean, I'm really not that good at it, but then I'd hire people that are good at it, is what
That's
it
right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
You
so it's
get
not about
Dan
what I
Chaya
can do.
back.
Yeah, it's what kind of people I can hire to get, things successful here for
Seriously,
sure.
though, Dan Chaya.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. So bring that
Yeah.
guy back because where is he now?
Probably Illinois,
Hmm.
Indiana. I can't remember. It's one of the I ones over there.
Hey Dan, where are you? Send us smoke signals and let us know you're okay. I still owe him $5.
Yeah,
I
we'll
go,
just keep that on the
bucks
DL.
there.
We'll edit this out.
Ooga.
Um, So the drag rope, Brian handled it a lot better than you.
Oh yeah,
So
he called me just. Did you tell him to call and gloat?
no, he said he made sure he would, and was like, "Well, I'm talking to him in an hour, and I'll make sure I do too."
Yeah. So he calls me. He's like, talk to me. I was like, about what? I thought he was calling to tell me that it was terrible and miserable, and the whole thing was like the worst
Like,
thing
yeah,
ever.
pretty easy.
He's like, "Yeah, it took me like a few tries, but then I figured it out. And then the last round, I wrapped out like 15 of them." I'm like, "You bastard!"
Yeah,
But
it might have been more than 15.
he was teamed up, right? So I got
That's
that going
true.
for me.
And in the workout, he didn't try to string any, but immediately after, he was stringing them, and I was just looking. I'm looking at like breakdowns and form, and he didn't
Yeah,
really have any,
yeah,
whereas you were
I
struggling.
did a
So
little bit, but I was
teeny
working
bit.
by myself for myself, and
Uh-huh. Mhm.
he had some rest time in between.
Yeah, and an audience, makes a big
And an
difference.
audience. And then so for the people that don't know, what's a drag rope?
Oh yeah, drag rope is basically like an actual rope. Like,
Thick.
what would you say, like a half inch in diameter,
Yeah, something like that.
maybe 3/4 inch even.
Yeah,
So
it's heavy.
they call it that because it's gonna drag on the air a lot more than like a speed rope versus a noodle rope too,
Yeah,
because of how thick it is. So you have to put more velocity into that rope in order to get it to turn twice underneath before you land again.
and jump twice as high.
And typically that means you need more time, so you jump higher. Yeah.
Anyway, so there's a CrossFit competition that Brian and I and a couple other people is
Yeah.
Andrew and
Andrew and
Joe
Joe,
and Katie. Is that it though?
Katie, I think so for
Yeah.
now.
Um, anyway, one of the workouts has it's like hold a sandbag, do 50 double unders with the drag rope, carry a sandbag, and then 50 more double unders with the drag rope or something like that.
You could bring it up if you want.
Bring what up? Oh, the workout. Heck
Yeah,
yeah,
you can
that's
find
fine,
it
man.
online. Share your
Let's
screen.
do it. Yeah.
Um, while he's doing that,
Yeah.
Ed Sheeran came out with a new album, and he
Ooh.
has like a documentary on Disney, kind of about making the album, which I thought was really interesting. My whole screen
So
just went
did you
black.
watch it?
Oh, there we go.
I just
Yeah,
hear.
we just finished the documentary last night. Um, And yeah, really interesting to see someone, sometimes you forget these high level achievers um, still have all the same problems that, we do. So he was dealing with a lot of like close friend of his died. His wife got cancer while being pregnant. And
I remember that.
he was getting sued and missed his grandma's funeral for the court case. And he ended up winning the case, so he didn't end up getting sued. But it was just, it sounded like a whirlwind of a 2022, and like
Just
it all happened in 6 months. So just sounded crazy.
so kind of one of my favorite moments over the last maybe like 10 years. So you know the record exchange?
Oh yeah, you mentioned that once. Yeah.
Yeah, well, nobody else has heard it. Don't ruin it,
Oh,
Mitch.
sorry. Yeah. No,
That's all right.
I'm just saying I remember you mentioning that.
So just found out that he was down there freaking singing, and it was me and 20 of my closest people that I don't know. And we got to watch Ed Sheeran sing acoustic version. He had his little
Yeah,
loop pedal and everything. It was
dude, that's
awesome.
badass.
Yeah,
I
it was pretty sweet.
I think the first time I saw him, he was doing the it was like the rap song that he does, "You
Oh
Need
yeah,
Me,
yeah,
I
yeah.
Don't Need You."
Yep.
And it was just a YouTube video. It was like 10 minutes long, and he just makes the whole song himself in a studio with a loop pedal. And I was just like, I've never seen anybody do that, and it just like it was good, you
Yeah.
know. And also hearing about how when he was little, he had a stutter,
Oh really?
um, and he was listening to Eminem's album and trying to rap along with it, and he said, "And I kind of kicked my stutter after that."
Oh seriously?
So now he's on an album with Eminem. You
Eminem.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like how fucking cool is that full circle?
Yeah. That's
Um,
crazy.
yeah, it's crazy.
Freaking yeah, I love Ed Sheeran, man. He's good.
I think he's
Number
just
one played
incredibly
artist on
talented.
Spotify. Did you know that?
That doesn't surprise me at all. I really
Yeah.
do think he's probably one of the most talented people I've seen in music. And I'm not a huge music nerd, but the broad depth that he has, like not only can he do all these different instruments, but he can do them in a way that kind of draws emotion into it and everything.
S-
I think better than most other artists.
Super unique too. I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
and
good stuff.
there was a couple albums where I felt like he started doing what he thought he wanted everyone to hear. So
Mhm.
it sounds like on this one he's kind of back to being him and not giving a shit about what everybody else wants,
Nice. So have you listened
which
to
is
it
kind
then?
of nice. I'm still in the process. I have
Oh,
not listened to it all.
too.
There's
We
one
will
that's really good.
review.
There's one that's
Yeah.
really good called Boat. It's
Boat.
my
Oh,
favorite
speaking
so
of
far.
boats.
It's a more of a depressing album, but for obvious reasons.
Yeah, yeah, he's dealing with some things.
Mhm.
Oof. Yeah. Well, here's the workout.
Okay.
So, yeah, you break into it.
Okay. So part one, it's a two-parter. So probably as far as points go, there might be two separate points, or is this one partner does one side, another partner does the other side? No.
So I think that we both do part one, and then we move on to part two together. From
After a 1 minute rest. Oh my God, 1 minute rest. So this is how long is this first part? 40 cal ski, 30 synchro kick throughs. Okay. 500-foot sandbag carry. So this is not necessarily a short workout. That calorie ski is going to be probably just under 3 minutes. So let's just call it three for easy math.
Mhm.
So that's six because there's one at the top and bottom. The 30 kick throughs, I'm imagining would be, maybe we'll give it 2 minutes there. So that's four plus the six. So 10 minutes there. And then the sandbag carry is going to be at least a couple minutes, I would think, too.
So probably gonna cap out
Um,
at the 10-minute cap.
No, I think in a partner it could be done faster, because it doesn't say you're both carrying a sandbag.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's true.
So
Yeah, we need
you
these.
probably are moving. You want to move fast with that sandbag, and then you can do, depending on what their standards are, you could do the synchro kick throughs much faster than the 2 minutes that I just gave. It's usually when I'm doing these time-based things, I'm thinking what should generally be the
Yeah, with like
stimulus.
good form.
Yeah. And with like a normal person, not like competition style.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that would have put us at like 12 minutes. So that's pretty dang close to what the time cap is, which means you just have to fucking move.
Yeah, just running.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. That calorie ski, hopefully you can do in 2.5 minutes. So that we could make that 5 minutes instead of 6.
You gotta teach me how to look good on the skier because I do it, but I don't know if I'm doing it right. Like,
okay. Okay. Anyway, so then you only have a minute rest, which is really like negligible.
yeah,
I'm not sure that even counts as anything.
you enough time to barf.
Yeah. And then you go into 12 sandbag cleans. How heavy is this bag?
125.
And I'm assuming it's like you could do a you go, I go, like you do a lift, then he does a lift, then you do a lift.
I hope so.
Or you could try to touch and go that, which I think you could do. I don't know if it'd really be worth it because this is such a long workout already.
Does it go over your shoulder? Like you just throw it over your shoulder?
That's what I don't know either. They might have you pause at the shoulder and release a hand versus throwing it right over. I hope they just have you throw it over because it's so much easier. There's no judging really to do. And anytime you can make it easier for the judges in a local competition is much better. 50 drag rope double unders. I'm assuming that'll be like 25 and 25. So I'm assuming this could take, this is a 9-minute cap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, you could probably be under the cap here. It'll be harder, obviously, being tired, but I would say this is like a 7-minute workout. Fresh.
Fresh. You can't say that when it's a part 2.
Well,
minute break.
But it is also partners, and I'm thinking about an individual's capacity. So,
okay, gotcha.
I imagine most of the time partner workouts have a tendency to move faster when you're sharing reps like that. They only move slower if you both had to do like calories.
Oh, okay.
Because usually that just draws things out when I'm comparing it solo to
individual. So I just noticed too, it says the bear hug hold while somebody's doing the calories.
Yeah,
so maybe when you get tired of the bear hug hold, you ditch it and switch. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you would probably want to do that. You'd probably want to just do 20 and 20, to be honest. And that bear hug hold will be very manageable, I think, for 20 and 20.
Yeah, because we did that. What was it? 125 pound?
Yeah, we did it for like it was 120, but you did it you did it like 3 minutes straight, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should be all right, right?
Yeah, you'll be fine.
All right. Cool.
The last one will be a little more challenging, but I still think you'll be fine. Okay, so that'll be fun to help you guys prepare for now that you have a drag rope to mess with.
Heck yeah.
Anything else in the news? You want to share your
Lori
your reel
Vallow,
you sent
guilty
me?
on all charges.
Yeah, is that the local case?
Yeah.
So I don't want to say, but I know someone on the jury, you know.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah, I can't say though.
Why? They're allowed to talk about it.
But I guess
you aren't allowed to talk about it.
I'm just trying to respect him. So
yeah.
Oh God, it's a guy.
Oh my God,
that narrows it down.
Yeah. Does he go to the gym?
Not talking anymore. Moving on.
Yes.
Okay, so did you want to show that reel you sent me? Because I actually sent that reel. I shared that reel as a story when I saw it, not when you sent it to me the day before.
One?
The kid and the muscles from Europe or something, from England.
Was that me?
Yeah, I'm like 90% sure you sent it to me.
It wasn't me. Kid and the muscles from Europe.
Oops, that's not it. Ooh. Jeff Powell.
Get out of here. Hold on. Somebody's hacked my account. Hold. Switch. Jeff Powell.
Oh, wait, this isn't the same one. I need to. I didn't actually watch this one. This same kid does a different one where he's like flexing on the camera.
Well, how do I find it?
I mean, I guess you go to that account, right?
Yeah, what's the guy's name? What's the account name?
Jacobs Mammy _Mammy.
Jacobs. JAC.
Yeah, it's like the second reel under the pinned reels.
Oh,
I don't know what you can see. You want to share your screen or not?
Oh, I'm trying to get over to my other account here. Profiles, how do you change? bear with me. So Jeff.Powell. Why won't you let me change? Well, son of a biscuit. Dude. So I'm stuck on my so I made a CrossFit workout Instagram page where I'm just like trying to make funny things like to sell. And then so I posted you, or I tagged you in it the other day of my back sweat on the thing.
Yeah.
I can't freaking switch, dude. It says
Oh my
switch.
gosh. Just search for just whatever Instagram is up. Search for Jacobs_Mammy.
Underscore MAMM.
It's like not even that hard.
No, okay, I found it. Donna Whalen. Oh, the kid laughing.
Maybe I didn't. I actually thought you sent me the one that I had shared as
Oh
a
my
story,
God,
so I didn't
no.
think anything of this one. I didn't look at it.
It was
Pull up your screen.
so freaking funny. Okay, yeah, let me switch. Let me just change my screens here.
He's got a couple ones apparently.
What's that?
Apparently, this kid's like just an entertainer.
Dude, it's so funny. It's so
He's
funny.
a pro. Dude, this camera view is really good for you, by the way.
I'm. Have you ever just like had one of those moments? Because like I made it full screen and
You look lost right now.
I have no idea what I'm doing. The screen is so big. Oh, okay, I found it. Praise the Lord. All right, are you ready? I can get to it. All right. So this kid, but I've got to find
scroll up to the top. Where's the top? Okay, that's that one right in the middle. Under that one.
This one.
Yeah, do we get volume? Get some volume.
I'm working on volume.
Look at these whoppers. nearly the size of a mountain. Aren't they, Mommy?
You.
Aren't they, Mommy?
Build them!
Oh my God, they're big mountains. What about your daddy? He hasn't got any, does he? Now?
No, they're tiny. They're nearly up to here.
Does he need to do?
Needs to work out. I go to the gym every day.
Do you?
Yeah.
And how do you get to the gym?
My daddy drives me.
Oh,
Really?
right.
I wake him up. Then he drives me over there. Then I lift the weights. I'm gonna go to the gym tomorrow. While you wake up. My daddy can't
He is
fight
a
that
5
much,
a.m.er
Tiny
in
muscles.
the works
You
right
would fit
now.
in so well with the 5 a.m. people.
Yeah, I go to the gym before you even wake up.
Oh my God. The one that I sent you was the one about the biscuits. Oh, hold on.
That
Just
one?
really fast. Did you watch that one?
No, I haven't, because like I said, I thought you just sent me that one.
Okay, here. hold on.
Yes, this
Repeat
is it.
after me.
Yeah.
A box of biscuits.
A box of biscuits.
A box of mixed biscuits.
Box of biscuits.
And a biscuit mixer.
And a biscuit missile.
This is
Oh
called
my
a tongue.
Fantastic. I'm gonna follow.
So
this person.
good. Yeah, if you
Oh,
guys didn't
freaking
get
hell.
anything out of this freaking podcast about flexibility, I mean, I think that was it.
And a biscuit mixer.
All right. So today we're talking
On task.
flexibility. And there are so many things I feel like I could say, because this is like a topic that I think people are highly either overgeneralizing or undergeneralizing. And the truth is where it obviously fits in the middle. And I think we have to understand a few different things. But the concept of CrossFit and the 10 components of fitness, or these adaptations that we're going over, is we want to be generally good at all of them, but not exceptional at any of them. And I know it sounds weird to be like I'm chasing not being exceptional at something, but that is kind of the idea. So when you have an extraordinary amount of flexibility, it's almost always coming at the lack of having a good ability somewhere else or enough of something somewhere else, right? It's going to take away from one of your adaptations in order to fill that adaptation a little bit further, right? So think about that. If you're one of those really mobile people, you are probably also really weak, really slow, or really just not powerful, right? So those are probably the three main adaptations that being flexible is probably going to keep you from.
Like a hindrance. We talked about that because you were it was maybe like I don't know, maybe podcast 7 or 8, talking about how like if you're like too good at one thing, it's not good, or you're too strong in one area. I don't remember what we were talking about, but it could have been something about one of the athletes or something in the games or something like that. But shit, I should probably
It could have
pull it
been
back.
when we introduced the 10 adaptations too.
Yeah, it also could have been that too. But yeah,
So it could have just been a few episodes ago.
wouldn't have been my first guess. I figured that you'd want to be like really good at like all of them, but I guess you can't be.
Yeah, I mean, if you can raise, all tides to where
Mhm.
you're above average at all of them, then you're probably in the CrossFit games,
So that's what I got to do.
right? Like just think about taking any one of those CrossFit games athletes and putting them somewhere in the spectrum of the adaptations. And I think you could usually find their weaknesses still pretty quickly, but based off of what they're not good at. But if they're good at, 7 out of 10 of them and they're above exceptional at them, they are probably in that realm, especially those ones that I believe are almost over tested and overemphasized, which is going to be cardiovascular respiratory endurance, stamina, strength, power. I think you see more speed now, but those other ones that kind of go underneath that aren't what you call organic adaptations,
Mhm.
those are the ones that get tested less because they're hard to test and be excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to test truly coordination. I think in this last games we saw that, but for the most part, that's a hard target to hit. It's also hard to test in that scenario. It's almost impossible to test in that scenario flexibility, just as like a, singular incident. It's got to be pulled in with a bunch of other stuff.
It's not just sitting down at a box and reaching forward to see how far your hands go.
Right. There, if you saw that in the CrossFit games, I quit. Like, that's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
Nobody
That's like
wants to watch
elementary
that.
school, man.
Yeah, the
That was
presidential
flexible
fitness
area.
test.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's something to keep in mind. But I think if you're exceptional at most of them, especially those first few, then chances are you're going to be a competitor. Now, I'd say for life, we want good at all of them. And we don't want to make those exceptions for competition because that's not the goal of life, right? So CrossFit is supposed to be all 10, raising the tides. Anyway, flexibility.
For the perfect person.
Yeah. Flexibility. And here's what I tend to see as an over generalization is that you don't need to train flexibility if you train the full ranges of motion.
Wait,
It's
you're
like
saying that?
I'm not. I'm saying that is
Oh,
a
okay.
common thing said,
Uh-huh.
and that is an over generalization, I
Okay,
think.
gotcha. Yeah.
The under generalization in flexibility is you need to stretch to be more flexible. It's the opposite end of the spectrum.
So what's the best way to stretch or to get more flexible? What? Do
Both.
both? Oh, okay.
So here's something to think about. If you're feeling tightness in a tissue, you're also experiencing weakness somewhere. Usually it's not in the tight tissue, it's somewhere else, either immediately surrounding the tight tissue,
Mhm.
or it would be what's called the antagonist muscle of that tissue. So if you're feeling tightness in your hip flexor,
Okay.
which is common, right?
I
Then
could
it might be
agree with that.
in the antagonist muscle of the hip flexor. So think about if your hip flexor is flexing your hip, what extends your hip?
Knee. No.
No,
Leg.
that's a joint.
Oh, you
Talking about a muscle
don't
group.
test me, man. What
Think about it.
extends the hip?
You're doing a deadlift, let's say,
Okay,
and the bar's on the ground and you're bent over to pick it up. You are now in a flexed hip position.
correct.
What's going to bring you to a standing or extended hip?
Oh, so your butt.
Muscle. Yes. Your butt, your hamstrings,
Uh-huh,
and your lower back,
Yeah.
right? So if all of those can be trained, you might get rid of the tightness sensation in the hip flexor. Because it might just be that it's weak in the glute.
You just got to strengthen your muscle.
Yeah. Typically, it's the glute or hamstring for people.
I guess that is the proper name for it as well, not the butt talks.
And then think about this again, because people oftentimes go, okay, well, I have tight hip flexors. I'm going to stretch them. Let's go to the lower back really quick. Lower back, if that's feeling tight, we know it could be actually a weakness in the opposing muscle. What's the opposing muscle to the lower back or group of muscles?
That would be, do we go up or do we go down?
Neither.
Inside? On the front?
Front. Yeah.
Yeah, your core.
Right. So think if your lower back, when you squeeze that muscle, it arches your lower back, right?
Okay, yep.
Okay. Now
can
squeeze
follow.
your abs and it'll flex your back, right? So it's going to take the tension off of the lower back. So we often see the weaknesses in the core or the abdominal muscles, right? When we see that tightness. But it could also be the hip flexors being weak. So if you're stretching your hip flexors and strengthening your abdomen in the absence of strengthening your hip flexors, you might not be seeing very many results because you also need the hip flexors to be strong. Just because they're tight doesn't just automatically mean they're strong, but it could mean that. You have to think about it logically.
So I have a question for you. What
Yeah.
is the difference between flexibility and mobility?
So I would say flexibility is just purely range of motion.
Okay.
Whether you're active or not, it doesn't matter. So like if I hold my arm out like this and someone else comes and moves it here for
Mhm.
me and they're holding it there, or we're using a band to stretch, like think of that as flexibility. I don't have to act on it, somebody else could.
Okay.
Whereas mobility is purely the demand of your body to reach that same position. Which is why in the definition of these adaptations, mobility and flexibility are in the same grouping, because it's simply range of motion of the joint, right? The ability to hit in range. Now, I define that as mobility as the strength to pull yourself into that position without assistance,
Ah,
right?
so like
Whereas
front rack position,
flexibility,
that would be more mobility to try and like get your elbow
typically,
down.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when we do our tests for people who are coming into the gym, we are kind of trying to establish, like, are we inflexible in a joint? Are we immobile in a joint? Here's another way to think of this. This is flexibility. I am acting on this finger, trying to pull it back towards my wrist as best as possible, right? Now this is mobility. That's how much mobility I have in that finger. This is the flexibility of that finger,
There we go.
right?
I love
Now,
when you use-
obviously, I have no functional need for that, so I'm not going to train mobility in that finger.
Yeah. Handstand walks. Oh wait, no, you curl your fingers, huh?
You don't need, it doesn't do you any good to have that flexibility.
That
Now,
flexibility.
I guess you could argue it would be nice in a press to handstand, but that's actually probably more in the wrist than it is in that finger.
Ooh.
And mobility, we're talking about the ability to pull my finger back. I'm not sure I really need that ever.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're doing a handstand, your finger's not going to be up here.
Yeah, that's
It's
true.
going to be down here, right? So I don't think that would be necessary at all. So point is,
Yeah.
this is an example of how to tell the difference between flexibility and mobility if you wanted to. If you wanted to categorize it so that you could systematically approach life and how to train. Otherwise, it's kind of like apples and oranges, right? Like they're both fruit and just eat them both. Like what's the big deal? Right? Like
Just each other, man.
I like it for the simple fact that we can kind of designate what bucket to do, so we don't have to waste as much time in one or another. So if I'm seeing a lack of flexibility in somebody, I'm not going to have them necessarily be working on a ton of mobility drills where it's like actively holding a position so much as it's like I just want them to find the position with assistance of some sort first, right? But I would argue too that if you're stretching something and you're not strengthening something, you're wasting your time.
If you're stretching something and not strengthening something, you're wasting your time.
Yeah. Now, let me rephrase that a little bit. If you're passively stretching something, meaning that there really is no tension as far as like you contracting a muscle, it's just you learning to tolerate a deeper range, but you're not actively working on what would pull you into that range as far as like strength goes, then I think it's not well-rounded as an approach. So it doesn't mean one doesn't help by itself. It just, couldn't it help a lot more if you also strengthen the things that would help you get there in the first place?
Yeah. So then is there something that you should be stretching without strengthening? Like in order to not like you said in the beginning, to like get smaller. Right? But is there something
I'm not worried about people getting smaller.
Or like tightening up, I don't know. You made like this motion it looked like earlier. Like you were like your body's like
I was probably talking about the lower back.
Oh.
Flexion and extension.
What about like touching your toes? Is that something that people should be doing as they get older?
If they can't do it, yeah.
So to practice it.
So I think I get what you're trying to say. Like, we want to maintain a certain amount of range of motion as we age, yes.
Right.
In order to allow our joints to move through the range of motion that life might demand of them.
Right.
And with the strength that would keep all those things healthy, and prevent us from like, because usually you have to think a lot of what we're doing in fitness is just preventing ourselves from falling when we're older and not being able to recover from that fall.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that like, think about it. You might be doing all your training for one incident that you don't even know for sure is going to happen or not.
Yeah.
But
so a broken hip's not a death sentence.
Yeah, that's the idea. But it is a death sentence at a certain age, according to the data, right? Like, I don't know what the percentages are, but it's pretty damn high.
Yeah, it's crazy.
For when you're above a certain age, if you sustain any sort of significant joint injury, you're more likely going to die in the next like 8 to 12 months.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Because
I've seen it happen so many times. Like, personally.
It's too stressful for your body to recover from that significant injury now. And you could avoid that injury should you have enough flexibility and strength, which is why you don't want to raise one tide without the other on that one.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's crazy to think about.
Yeah, and you really want to, I mean, there's a couple of, what do you call them, where people, opposing belief systems on that, where some people believe you don't need to ever do a strength through a full range of motion. But I feel it far more compelling and logical to say, yes, you absolutely should train strength in all ranges that you want to maintain.
I mean, it makes sense to me. If you're gonna work on it anyway, make it stronger.
And if if you've ever followed like knees over toes guy, big believer in that. Train to the fullest range you have with strength.
Knees over toes. He just is he like on Instagram or something, or is he just like a?
Yeah, that's like his Instagram handle, and then he blew up. He's got like millions of followers now. He's helped thousands of people with knee pain, things like that, all through really simple training means. Like,
that's cool.
And he went from so his backstory is really fucking. You gotta like watch like 10 of his videos. He'll probably tell you his backstory, at least in 2 of them. But it's a really cool story because he's like, he went and tried to play college basketball. He played for like some terrible school, couldn't hardly even touch the rim, had all these problems with his knee pain going on with that, and had multiple surgeries. Comes out of all that stuff and just decides, you know what, I'm going to go learn to strength train myself and see if that helps, and ends up recovering full range of motion of his knee, which wasn't there. And he can now dunk all the different ways that he wants to be able to dunk. and it's like, and now he's not a, college athlete anymore, but he's been on Mark Bell's podcast and amongst many, many other podcasts. But
Have you reached out to him to see when he could get on ours?
not yet. No.
No.
I have done his program before. It's very, very simple to follow. Like, it's just hard because it's not a lot of variety.
Yeah.
Which I find just so boring sometimes,
Yeah,
especially when it's
repetition
relatively
like that.
simple.
Can't handle
But
that.
anyway, there's a time and a place, right? So when it comes to training flexibility, if you've determined that your flexibility is the problem, you've done a test and you've determined that. Does that make sense?
Like you have to do a test to determine that you have an issue with your flexibility.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I hear so many people say it's my mobility or my flexibility, that's my problem. And then I take them through our tests and I go, well, flexibility is not an issue. I just moved your thigh to exactly where it needs to go without
Yeah.
any sort of compensation.
Yeah.
So it's not your flexibility, right? It's probably your mobility. That could make sense. Or it could just be the fact that you don't ever spend time in that position. Maybe
Yeah,
it's time to start,
uncomfortable.
right?
Yeah.
So some of it's just that, but I think if you're you've determined that it's flexibility through a test, then it's time to probably stretch mostly. And I would say frequency is very important there.
Just to stay on top of it, like how often should you be like stretching? Is it daily, multiple
3 to
times a day?
5 times a week, probably.
Oh, okay.
3 to 5 times a week. And I think the general prescription would be between 10 and 15 sets of 30 seconds of a static stretch would be, if we wanted to be really, really specific, that would probably be a protocol that would work for most people.
Okay. Damn, it's a lot of stretching. It's like a full
It is
day.
not, yeah, but if you can isolate where you need to stretch, 5 by 30 seconds is only 2.5 minutes.
True. Yeah.
Obviously with some rest in there, you could double it. Okay, so you spend 5 minutes stretching if you can be specific enough to locate what exactly is inflexible. Right? And that's why it's important, I think, to assess it, because otherwise you're going to have to do a lot of stretches to try to hit that smaller target.
Yeah. So what, and then I guess this is coming into like next week. So we've got like our bring a friend week, right? You're not doing any of that stuff where you're like doing any sort of testing until somebody wants to sign up and actually come to the gym, right?
Correct. Yeah. I sometimes throw the simple tests into a warm-up for the coach to determine potential modifications. Like for the deadlift, for instance, if I know we're doing a lot of deadlifting that day, I might do the toe touch test, see who's drastically like not hitting that point, and then be like, okay, I want this person pulling from higher off the ground so that they're not, putting themselves in a position where they have to create a ton of tension, but they can't find the correct tension or position because they're not flexible.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But for the most part, I try to find this stuff ahead of time and let people know what's going on there.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the hardest thing about group fitness is that I can't really change the whole group programming to fit the needs of a few people being immobile in one spot or another.
Yeah.
But what I can do is if we're doing a strength day and we have 3 to 5 minutes of rest in between sets, I can send them out to do their flexibility in between sets. And it could be specific to them.
Targeted.
That's coming, by the way.
Hey,
been on other people's programming and that's not been an option, but we're changing it now. So
what happens to be happening? Are you going to tell us?
Yeah, we're just taking it back over.
Nice. I mean, I
mean, for me, it's exciting because it's one of my favorite things to do as a gym owner is the programming. It just takes a lot of time. And then it can be difficult because the communication with other coaches has to go up in order for them to understand exactly what and why everything's programmed.
Yeah.
And staying on top of that, plus the new people coming in, plus the current members, plus, you know what I mean? It's like there's so many buckets to try to fill. That's usually it takes away from another place. So
yeah. Give and take.
That's the challenge. But I have another coach helping me with it this time, Alex. So over time, he'll get more and more responsibilities with it, and he'll get better at that stuff as well. And that way, there's at least 2 of the main coaches doing it. We only have to communicate to 2 other part-time coaches, which is easier, right?
Yeah. Manageable.
So anyway, flexibility. Let's think of a scenario maybe where someone's lacking flexibility and I want to help them, I'll let you pick the avatar, and I'll do it on the fly as far as like what I might do as a test, and depending on what I find, what I might have them do as a protocol.
What do you mean by the avatar? Like pick.
So like we're picking a fake person basically, or it
Okay.
could be a real person, but
Yeah. So let's say they feel like they're lacking flexibility in their shoulder.
and why do they think they're lacking flexibility in the shoulder? What's going on that
Well,
made them think that?
This is very personal for me. Because of I guess I don't really know why they told me. It's not me, definitely, but previous injury, I think, has got maybe some scar tissue or something built up, and they can't. Their flexibility on their right hand side is just not as much as their left hand side.
Okay. But so you're saying, it sounds like the way you said that they've tested their flexibility on each side?
I guess not done like a test, like sat down and actually done it, but just can tell from working out. I've heard from them that it's
Okay.
not as flexible.
Right. So, one thing would be, you know, scar tissue is only going to happen if there's a significant injury, right? So significant injury usually means they probably underwent surgery or went through an extensive PT protocol.
Snowboard accident.
Did they go through an extensive surgery or PT protocol?
Negative.
Does it hurt every single day?
Most days.
Okay. So it could be something significant in there.
Yeah.
But that would be something to think about, is like, if there's been no structural damage done, it can't really, there would be no begging for scar tissue.
Oh.
But anyway, let's just pretend there is or there isn't. It doesn't matter what story we tell it, right?
Yeah.
What matters is how we're going to overcome it, right? So if we do a flexibility test, we'll usually have them, let's say it's the inability to get their shoulder here.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So we'll have them usually lay on their backs so that gravity can assist them in getting their shoulder there. And my only requirement is they're not allowed to break at the elbow at all.
Oh, okay.
And if they can get their index finger to touch the floor without going out here,
Uh-huh.
right? Then, and it's relatively straight in line without the rib like going up like this and using the lower back, then we'll say that's actually good flexibility.
Oh, okay.
Right.
I'll have to tell
So
the
then
guy.
it becomes a mobility issue. So you could test mobility on that same thing by sitting with your back flat against the wall,
Uh-huh.
and then trying to raise your arm up to that wall instead of the floor.
Yeah.
Right. With all the same rules, no compensations anywhere and such. And if that lacks, then we're just going to deem that's more of a strength issue.
Yeah.
You have the range of motion. Now we still might make this person stretch a little bit to try to, you know, if there was a muscle that's tight, that's resisting this, just making it that much harder for the weak muscle to go into it before they go into their strength training, I might have them stretch the potential tight areas, which for this is lats and pecs typically.
With the mobility portion, right? Or is it
Yes,
also
with flexibility too, they just would spend far more time in stretching if it was flexibility.
Okay.
So like, okay, they could not touch the floor. Cool. That's more of a flexibility issue. We're going to have them stretch a lot more. We're still going to have them do the same 2 exercises, let's say, or 4, that the other person with mobility is going to have to do, but they're going to be weighted more towards stretching than strengthening. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Whereas now the person who can touch the floor because they're having that gravity assist, but they can't touch the wall, this person now would have less stretching, and it would always be front loaded ahead of their strengthening exercises that should be getting that problem solved.
So he needs to check out his mobility, because that could be
correct. And the whole, if we double back to what they were saying about scar tissue, whatever else, blah, blah, it doesn't matter what the story is. What matters is the protocol to get better. The reason I say that is because a lot of people get hung up on these weird stories that they tell themselves. And that's the only reason they're never going to make any progress. When it's like, it's the actions you do all the time that's going to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of times those actions don't differ by a large degree at all. they're oftentimes almost the exact same. In PT, it's the same too. When people get an ACL injury, MCL injury, a lot of this, there's a huge crossover between what they're doing, whether it's MCL or ACL, to repair it.
Okay.
And when you're talking about functional movement, it doesn't matter. You need to move your knee.
Yeah, just do it.
Kind of. It is sometimes just that simple. You just need to do it and be careful about not overdoing it. That's all it really comes down to. It's a recipe of not overdoing it.
And stop telling having him stop telling himself the story, the narrative, right?
You whiffed that one hard. Cat's out of the bag now.
Busted.
But yeah, I think, and that's a valuable piece to talk about, regardless of if it's flexibility or nutrition or being overweight or being depressed. The story you tell yourself is the one you're going to believe.
Yeah.
So you have to reframe your story.
Just tell a different one.
Tell a different one, or focus on the actionables and fuck the story, right?
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't make sense to dwell on the things that have happened. It only makes sense to change the future, right? So,
How you just turn that all around.
So anyway, let's go back to the shoulder thing. So let's say we've determined it's mobility, not flexibility.
Right.
Stretch protocol might be 2 sets instead of 5 sets, or 2 sets instead of like 4 sets, depending on how frequently we're doing this.
Okay.
Mobility usually is going to be less frequency than flexibility. Flexibility is going to be like almost every day. Mobility is going to be like every other day at most.
So things I can do at the gym every other day, just whatever. Come in a few minutes early, do some mobility.
So always hit the lat and pec probably right away, because those tends to be the 2 major culprits. And a banded distraction is a good way to hit the lat. But if you bring it out away a little bit, you can also start turning into that and hit the pec pretty easily too.
Oh, okay.
All right. So banded distraction, let's say we do 2 to 3 sets of 30-second holds there, passive holds. You're not fighting anything. You're not overstretching by, like, it shouldn't be strenuous. It should just put the stretch there, get that sensation,
feel it,
and breathe, right? Very calming breaths. Then we go from that into the active stuff. And the active stuff for, let's say, shoulder flexion could be a combination of a dumbbell pullover.
Okay, on your back.
So, yep. So you'd be like laying down on your back on a bench usually, and you're lowering slowly to eccentrically load and extend that lat, and then contracting it up here. So that would take care of the lat in particular, and that's introducing eccentric load, which is really important, I think.
Yeah.
Remember, eccentric load is just anything resisting against gravity while the muscle is lengthening.
Yeah. It's nice to have like an idea of what I can tell my friend to do to try and make the shoulder feel better.
Still going with that.
Still going with it,
The other thing we could do is eccentric loading the pec. And so I like to use more of a fly movement to keep it more in the pec, because if we go into this, sometimes people's mechanics aren't the best, so they end up in the deltoids or the anterior deltoid too much. So I like having a more of a fly, and it's not about load so much as just about controlling against that eccentric. So that takes care of, that takes care of the eccentric. I mean, it should, the heavier we can get it with great control, the better, I think. But I don't think that's where you would jump to yet. And so you might do like 3 sets of each of those one day. Now the other day, 2 days later, let's say, or even in the same session, if you're really being kind of aggressive, you have the time frame and the ability to recover from these things, then you would also want to make sure that you're strengthening all the posterior that would actually help you pull this back. All right, which is a lot of these upper posterior muscles, as well as the middle traps. So that's rear deltoid, rhomboids, middle traps, and I believe it's trap minor, or not trap minor, teres minor. So all those, just think about it. You can hit most of those with like face pulls.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Banded.
Or pull aparts.
I do love that. Banded 7.
Or Y's when a bent over position. Right. PVC liftoffs when you're laying in that hollow position. Those really hit a lot of that. Right. they're terrible because that mobility is not great.
Yeah. No, it just does not feel good.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So those would be like the simple things to do. And so the protocol kind of becomes stretch, do your eccentric stuff, do your, pump stuff, you could say, for that,
For
for the back.
yeah, Terry's minor.
Yeah. All the while, it's all kind of solidifying why you stretched in the first place, right? So it's combating the tightness coming back into the lat or the pec.
And how long until I can anticipate my shoulder feeling better?
One day, just one session.
It better be like that.
No, I mean, if you did it consistently for 12 weeks, 3 times a week, and you could make probably that routine be 12 to 15 minutes,
No big deal, right?
you could easily, I would definitely say that would probably improve everything significantly. The
Nice.
hard part is that almost nobody has the discipline and diligence to do 3 times a week of 15 minutes of, highly focused work
Commitment.
when it's the same shit every time.
Yeah.
You can add variety, but again, then we're just broadening that target, and
Yeah.
we need
And
that target to
I
be
know
more.
exactly where it is. There's no.
Well, that's where you feel it. That's not where it is.
Well, I just know that I don't want to be working on something up here, so I got to stay targeted here.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
You might though.
Maybe.
Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. Where you feel the pain is just a symptom. It is just the message. You don't shoot the messenger, right? So you don't need to target specifically where you feel it every time.
Oh.
Now it could be, but it's not always the case. Oftentimes it's a referred issue. So that's just where you're feeling it. It could be radiating from somewhere else.
Damn it.
So sometimes if the scapula is not moving appropriately, it's oftentimes because there's a slight elevation to it, which means this is actually what's tight, which makes a joint issue here because the scapula hasn't pulled that into the correct position to glide through the joint.
I wish it was just like easier, to like.
It's just not that simple.
No, damn it.
But again, we were talking very specific things like flexion, and
Yeah.
we weren't talking about impingement there. Impingement might be something up here, but that's usually where you're like, oh, pinch. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't have any of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
it all comes together. That's why I think the crossover symmetry is such a useful tool, because it's training the scapula and all the ranges it's supposed to be able to do and control. So it fixes a lot of the mobility issues that anybody might have in the shoulder. And it takes, once you get good at it, 5 to 6 minutes to do. When you're new to it, it takes like 10 minutes.
To read which one you're after and what are you targeting and what do you need
It takes
to
like
use.
15
The red
minutes if
one?
you have to read every single one. Yeah.
Purple one or the red one? Which one do I need?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Gosh, I mean, I feel like any of these is a rabbit hole, but I think if you just kept it simple, flexibility, mobility, kind of know the difference, know they both sit in the adaptation of flexibility when you're looking at the list, but you could also take some of the mobility things and move it over to strength. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because sometimes you're just lacking strength, it's not an immobile joint.
Yeah, and I feel on that, I have noticed that it is hurting less and it also heals faster. So we did our snatches the other day and I jumped out of the overhead squat because it started to hurt.
Okay.
And I was like, fuck, like this is gonna hurt for like 3 weeks. And I'm fine. Like it feels great. And I wonder I've been
the path to getting out of pain is a lot like the weight loss path. It's not linear. So you're not just going to see this nice slope in either direction. You're going to see plateaus. You're going to see minor setbacks, things like that. And that's with pain, especially. I hear that a lot where it's like, oh, I heard it, but this time I bounced right back.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, we're building confidence in that. Not every tweak is the same tweak.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay to tweak yourself in the process of healing as long as you weren't doing something ridiculous, which arguably snatching would be probably at certain weights a little bit irresponsible. Like while you're healing, your snatch should be nowhere outside of good technique.
Yeah. They're all good technique. You've seen my snatch.
All right. Did you say feel it or
I've said you've seen it.
okay? I thought you said feel it. I was a little
That
concerned.
doesn't make any sense. I mean, unless it was so profound that you feel my snatch whenever it happens.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking there was some innuendo going on there.
No, I wouldn't do that.
All right. Well, if you got anything else, Jeff?
No, I'm excited to start strengthening this area to see if it like fully heals my my shoulder.
It will if you stick with it.
Surprise!
It's all about
It was my
consistency.
shoulder.
I mean, my friend's shoulder.
I'll let him know.
All right. Good chat. See you guys
I'm
next
glad
week.
I'm back,
Episode
man.
17.
You missed me, right?
Yeah, not really. These were much more efficient, you know.
I know, and faster.
We started on time. Just
Wow.
kidding.
That one was in the
You
chamber,
bring
but
that
I
up.
deserved it.
No, we are looking to do this on a different day too. So if you're used to joining us on Friday, we'll be shifting gears soon. Like, comment, subscribe, ask your questions, all that fun stuff.
Leave it behind.
And we will see you in Valhalla.
Go get flexy.
Oh, wait, that's the wrong button.
Oh.